Well, thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, when you agree to do one of these speeches, you kind of wonder if anyone's going to come to your session. So I think Alan and I are both really thrilled that you're all here. We're going to try to shed some light on the way both of us look at the world, maybe from a little different perspectives. But so what I wanted to do to start out with was just take a little bit of time and to develop a basic definition of what is really important to our industry that I think pretty much the entire globe ignores. And so for us, we're going to talk about the economics of cover crops, but that kind of starts with sustainability. Obviously a buzzword. Our family's talked about sustainability for about 150 years at this point. So we think it's something that's very important. We had Dr. Montgomery out to our farm 3 years ago to speak to our website annual meeting talking about sustainability and erosion and the death of civilizations. So for us, we kind of take it seriously. We're going to talk about soil carbon, nutrients, yield, and ultimately profits. And just off the top, I'll just tell you, these are what our numbers are for our farm. And you heard a bunch of guys talk about non-GMO in the last open house session, which is a great way to offend 94% of agriculture, which I don't think this group needs to do if you want to increase adoption. We're very much in the camp of using existing technology to be as profitable as possible and yet be sustainable. So that's kind of where our mindset comes from. So my wife Jane and I gave a speech at our church a few weeks ago about sustainability. And of course, sustainability means a different thing to every single human being. And it depends on whether you're marketing for Meyer or Land O'Lakes, what sustainable means to you. The American Soybean Association says that soybeans are sustainable. It's the most unsustainable crop after cotton on the planet. It produces no organic matter and uses a bunch of fertility. So from our perspective, we take the definition to be you need to meet the needs of the present without diminishing the ability to meet future needs. There's all kinds of, go on the internet, you find all kinds of sites that talk about all these different things, but we do think there are three main components: the environment, economic, and social. We're going to talk about mostly economic today. And what about our farm, how it fits in? So the first thing, if you come to our farm, we've been doing 1 acre grid soil sampling now for 24 years. And Rodney, who's also in the back, can pull up a printout for you of yield by organic matter, yield by carbon content. And then that's what we use to actually develop our yield goals, which drive all of our 1 acre variable rate fertility and all those other things. And everyone in the world knows this, right? Blacker soil is more productive. This isn't like this is earth-shattering, but almost nobody in the world uses that to think about the future, or at least not for very far into the future. So for us, if we can take a soil that's lighter and whiter and make it browner and blacker over time, our yield goal goes up. And so we would just, that's just kind of where we start out from. And if you look at our yield history on our farm, I don't know what 6,000 samples is for 24 years. There's quite a few data points. And we have this almost linear relationship between organic matter and yield. There are a lot of different studies that'll give you the same thing if you go out and look on the internet. But for us, it's very clear the way this relationship works. And so we just ask the question, or take the position that to be sustainable, you have to maintain the carbon content of the soil. And this is what Dr. Montgomery's data talks a lot about. As a globe, we are not doing it. And as a state, Indiana isn't even close to maintaining the organic content of its soil, even in 2018. So from our perspective, these are the Morale plots in Illinois. They've got great data since 1880. From 2000 forward, the organic matter's kind of flattened out. Maybe it's back up to 1.85% at this point. But you hear everyone say we've burned off half the topsoil in North America. This is where that data comes from. People that say that are extrapolating one way or another. So for us, conventional farming methods are not even close to sustainable. I call this peak economics. This is buying in to the yield contest, right? Successful farming last month, soybean yield cost test winner, 4 fertility applications, 4 insecticide applications, and guess what? They don't measure the water leaving the field. How's that even legal? We don't let AEP do that. If AEP turns up the boilers to make more electricity and pollutes the environment, we find the dickens out of them. But see, we're special. We're farmers. We don't have to worry about the environment because we're the original one. Environmentalists, right? Believe our own PR long enough. Anyway, so for us, we call it kind of like peak economics, but we're not close. So moving forward, USDA and NRCS, the data on this is pretty clear. Once you begin tillage, 25 years later, you're down to about 50%. The data is pretty good that 20% of global CO2 emissions are from soil degradation. Dr. Montgomery has a number of civilizations that cease to exist because of soil degradation. And ultimately the question becomes, why should we be any different, at least on our farm? So we like to tell people, when we're out trying to rent land, try to manage the land, we take water samples with us. They're not easy, they're pretty easy to get every time it rains, right? There's mud in the water and then there's not. But every time you do a tillage pass, you're mining the soil, oxidizing it with carbon, peak economics. So we'd like to challenge ourselves, can we profitably grow corn and soy and still increase the soil carbon content? Now, if you're at this meeting, you already know the answer to that. But apparently 97% of North American agriculture does not know the answer to that, okay? But if you're here, I'm speaking to the choir. I mean, we got Jane Hardison, 7th row back here. She's known this for 45 years.
Now 43.
40? Oh, it's great to see you. I mean, and she's done such a great job serving the state of Indiana for so long. We're so blessed to have people like her in our state leadership. So this is the question. So we're here harvesting soybeans. What else were you doing? We're capturing data, 10 data points every 10th of a second, spatial data. And right behind, you heard the guys talking this morning, Rodney's going to be planting oats, radishes, rapeseed, and clover. I had the question at lunch, what are you guys doing different? We just keep getting greener. We keep throwing things in that are going to grow year round. We keep throwing in different things in the cocktail. We started out with oats, and then we added radishes, and now we've added rapeseed and clover. Because we want something living in the soil. The data is pretty clear that that's important. So I just stepping through this for people that haven't seen how this kind of develops. Most of you guys have, but this is what it looks like when you plant the cover crops. You come back 4 weeks later in Indiana, and you get this kind of growth. If you fly into the Indianapolis airport from the northeast on the approach pattern, you fly over our farm. It's bizarrely easy to see where our farm is because it's the only green one out there. And when you get looking at this, one of the things that people don't really think a lot about in terms of carbon, you burn carbon when you do tillage, but when you have erosion, you wash off active carbon. And so if we can take erosion to zero, which is what our intention is, and you can see we don't get much erosion in a 3-inch rain event into a field like this, it really helps you maintain your carbon content. Over winter, 2 of these 3 things will die, and the clover dies most years as well in spots. So you come back and plant on the left, and basically what's left is rapeseed. Had lots of questions, well, how do you plant green? Well, don't try to plant into cereal rye or annual ryegrass. Plant into rapeseed. It's still green.
Understanding.
See, learning what fits on your farm is the key to making this work. And I don't know what works on your farm. But for us, with our planter, I can plant into rapeseed forever and get 100% stands. This is Rodney planting into cereal ryegrass. We have trouble getting the annual to live through the winter on our farm, but cereal ryegrass, as it gets too big, we have some issues with voles and things like that, so we're working on modifying that with new mixes as well. Putting oats in the mix in the fall
Difficult.
instead of just 100% cereal rye, so we get a little bit less dense cover in the spring. This is 4 weeks after I planted that corn. You can see we used a GMO pesticide to kill the rapeseed, so we're not in the non-GMO camp at all. But what we have here, you can see, it's a beautiful deep dark green corn, so you've got to bring the technology to bear. Is what we're trying to get at. You can grow really good crops, but you have to have, row starter, fertility. You got to get the nitrogen there at the right time, and manage all those issues to be successful. This is what the corn looks like. It's not that stereotypical, ugly-looking no-till cornfield. We put a lot of sulfur and stuff that we do, which we think helps the color a lot. And then ultimately, answer the question: can we increase soil carbon? So, this is a field at Rodney's house. Been no-till since '91. Got his first cover crop in 2002, and from 2002 to 2012, we increased the organic matter by 1.1%. And the next testing cycle was 2016. We're up to about 3.7% in this field. So we do kind of think you're going to grow at faster or slower rates depending upon the environment in any given year. But the bottom line is we can prove with lots and lots of data points at this point that we can increase the soil carbon content and by more than 1/10%. And we can do that farming in a traditional commercial farm environment. We're growing commercial soybeans and commercial corn in rotation, but we're doing things to get something growing on the farm all the time. My great-grandfather would have said, duh, right? Before we had all the chemical Band-Aids, that's how they used to do this. So it's not like we're doing anything new. We're just kind of going back to what good people did 100 years ago. So that's the first part of this. Can we maintain soil carbon content and possibly build it? We actually think we've got 6,000 acres of data, and in very, very few places do we not build carbon content over time. And we continue to add more and more growing things into our mix. So we're kind of under the impression or belief that if we continue to go forward in time, we're actually going to get better and better, possibly even faster, which is kind of an interesting concept. And especially when you think about the economics of a system that gets better over time as opposed to gets worse over time.
Aren't you glad?
Rick Clark over in Attica, Indiana, does a lot of work on this stuff. He calls it regenerative ag. And I told him the word's too hard to say, it's never going to catch on. But the whole point is, we've degraded things. Anyone that says that we're maintaining the status quo at this point, well, that's fine, but we have degraded a lot to this point. For people that have livestock in a rotation, boy, this is so much easier. We're trying to present data on a farm that you don't need livestock. You can still do this stuff that makes good economic sense. So we think we can farm and increase the carbon content, and it doesn't look like the neighbors. When you drive home from here, what I like to tell people, if you see brown dirt, you just saw a massacre. It's dead. They just burned off tons of carbon, microbial flush, put a bunch of carbon in the atmosphere to make the phosphorus and potassium really look the concepts on the tile lines this winter rains. That is exactly what the data says is happening. If we jump to some data from Shalimar Armstrong at Purdue, Purdue has not been a big proponent of overcropping and no-till.
Have seen
over the years. They kind of come along grudgingly. I didn't know we had a guy like him on staff. This guy's like a worldly renowned for doing watershed-based tile discharge studies. And he actually works at Purdue. You've got to be kidding me. But his data over a 3-year period of time, sampling every bit of water leaving the field, shows cover crops reducing the leaching of nitrogen by 50%. On the limited tests that we've done on our farm, we find the same thing to be true. The other way to look at that is over 24 years of testing, we're applying about 1/3 of the tri-state recommendations. We're doing tissue testing every single year, so we're still never deficient in phosphorus and potassium, and our soil levels are holding constant. So the tri-state recs basically are an environmental disaster, but we can't talk about that in public. So the bottom line is that we know that we can use less fertility if we stop letting it get in the river. And the only way to do that in Indiana, because we get, they're talking about 10 inches of rain all year in Oklahoma, we get 10 to 20 inches of rain when everything's dead, except an overwintering cover crop. And that's the way the system works. We're catching free nutrients that the soil is mineralizing. It is not letting them get in the river. So from that perspective, Shalimar's data completely backs up what our 24-year experience has been. And so when you start looking at economics,
guys planting.
Why would you ignore that you're going to have to apply less fertilizer? And you have to give yourself at least some credit. And whether you give yourself as much credit as I do, I don't let your farm do what you want. But the bottom line is we think that there are real savings in terms of fertility loss. There are societal savings that nobody cares about. We don't keep track and penalize agriculture for societal degradation. Ag's not taxed for the dead zone in the Gulf, which the EPA proves to use about 91% ag's fault. So, the point being that we're trying to, just on a pure, our farm, we're not buying as much PK&M. This is some data, Dr. at EFCO, and Rodney are speaking at the next session. And this is from, we were fortunate enough to shoot out a grant to bring some of the $50,000 testing devices out and leave in our field all year to test soil temperature and soil moisture. And you get some really cool data. And the data, as one of the guys on the panel said, just proves what you knew all along. But it's not able to prove it, right? And so where we have, if you're looking at our field and where we have, this is no cover crop at 10 centimeters and 20 centimeters deep, so actually pretty deep, versus cereal rye cover crop, 10 centimeters deep, 20 centimeters deep. And what you see is that the soil stays cooler. This is the annual spike in low temperature during the day, and it stays cooler forever. If you go out into this plot, some of this data is from July 21st. There's zero residue cover in our farms after about June 1st. It's gone. The critters have eaten it all. I mean, we couldn't meet HDL requirements on most of our farms without a cover crop because there's zero residue left on top of the surface. So when you look at it, you say, well, why is the soil cooler? Well, the guys talked about it, and Dr. Moon talked about it. The soil is cooler because you're actually creating a thermal exchange as opposed to sunlight on the dirt. You're getting a lot of channels, you're getting a lot of air moving up and down in the whole soil profile. And the soil temperature at about 7 feet is about 48 degrees. So you're getting movement of air up and down in that entire soil profile by having the cover crop roots going down 5 feet. So anyway, the soil does stay cooler. We always thought this would be a benefit. It's nice to be able to prove it. It's a benefit. We retain more water. This is like another one of those duh moments, right? You're going to have higher organic matter, so you're going to hold more water. So guess what? You hold more water. And when you're looking at this, though, it's kind of interesting to us that even at the 10 and the 20 centimeter depths, you get much less water. You know, 20 centimeters down is a long way down, right? And you're still holding much less water. And so this is what we see out in that field. When we look at the test plot data results in a little bit, you'll kind of see that we're starting to see this. So again, it's just nice to have the data to back up what you knew should be happening. So what are we talking about doing? We're talking about building a system of production that's very stress tolerant. And we're not going to get into it today. We have some great data on a county basis that, yes, in fact, when times are tough, our yields are better. So this plot that we have, it's a 100-acre plot. It's got about 65 reps. We use 4 different cover crops and 4 different nitrogen rates. And the plot's getting a little bit old because we're not even using the same covers that we're growing now in our commercial fields. But the data from this plot has been entirely consistent over the past 10 years. This is the 5th time the plot's been in corn. Every single time the plot's in corn, and we look at the nitrogen rate, just give all this work to Neil to do. 165 pounds actual land is the highest economic rate for us. And I like to tell people, you won't write this presentation unless you're willing to believe the data. So if you're on a farm and you look at the other 3,000 acres of corn we plant, the average nitrogen rate is around 165 pounds. And I think next year Rod Sweden is going 67.2 or something. So the point being is that we know going and putting on more than 165 pounds of actual land doesn't produce an economic return. It does produce a few more bushels.
The kind of growth that you get from that.
Okay? Conventional tillage people have to use more nitrogen. So when you hear a Purdue plot that says, well, you got to have 200.
Now, if he would have got very bad,
what's the history of the field? What's the tillage practice? If you got a long-term no-till field with cover crops, 205 is a complete waste of money. The soil itself is going to cycle enough to maximize your yields. When we look at different types of cover crops, no cover versus annual ryegrass versus cereal rye versus oats radish. And the thing we tell people is, we just can't get the cover crops to lose the plot. This is the 5th time through. And if you're looking at the plot, it's incredibly consistent. The only thing that's not consistent is this year annual rye and cereal rye didn't quite meet the no cover. And I know who did that. I know who made that mistake. That was me. I planted this plot April 18th in the mud. Okay? So I did everything in the world you're not supposed to do with cereal rye as a green cover crop and didn't add extra nitrogen, as everybody in the world knows you're supposed to do because we can't put it at the test plot, and we still had the same yield as no cover crops, or 1 bushel less. Obviously, economically, about 3 bushels less, 4. So, yeah, you can make cover crops not work if you're dumb enough and try hard enough. I do all the time. But interestingly to us, right? So the normal mix for us on the commercial farm is oats, radishes, rapeseed, and clover now after soybeans going to corn. Oats and radishes in this plot.
Coming out with some new winter.
Bushel better than no cover. The average over the 5 reps is 7.8. If you go and take out the very low nitrogen rate, which makes a little bit of sense, right? Because you never only put 95 pounds of anhydrous on the field and 30 pounds with the planter. We do.
higher level of management, because there are some things that can go wrong with
Those
that.
radishes.
Here's just a picture of winter bar.
Reps have never lost
It's
this
a little hard to get.
And you think
But this
about
tritic
the
is
science and technology behind that cover crop and what it's accomplishing for us. And the fact that because it's a Purdue plot, we're planting shorter season soybeans. Average bean yield on the plot's about 60, right on our whole farm average.
it's not going
But we're growing a lot of 2-5.
Probably will be one of the first winter cereals to mature.
We can get 6 to 8 inches of growth in the fall with oats and radishes, and gives us a huge mat of basically we're ramping up the microbes to give us a lot of available nutrients, and we're seeing that in the yield results. So if you're going to do any kind of economic analysis on this, you got to know what are you planting. So these are the 4 mixes we're using. We've got about 500 acres of experiments with all kinds of crazy stuff that I can't even say the name of, because we're going to continue to get greener and greener and more diverse going forward. But early after soybeans, so before, for us, that's before October 5th. Then late after soybeans is after October 5th, which is about half and half for us. And then early after corn, so we'll shell about maybe a third of our corn normally before we start bean harvest. If things are going well. This year didn't go well, but that's the idea generally. And we'll have oats, rye, and rapeseed after corn. It used to be just rye. But again, we're trying to manage the pests that are giving us trouble and get us something that's a little bit easier to manage in the springtime and still get the benefit of the cereal rye on mold suppression, we hope. And then late after corn, of course, Rodney planted 1,000 acres of rye last week. We don't really care for doing it this fall or next spring. One of the guys at the panel mentioned that you just do it every year and you just don't know which year it's going to work. And I think that's what we found. 4 years ago, it was so dry,
Here's a
thing germinated in 2013.
fully headed out.
Like in November. Never across.
So when people ask,
Beautiful oats and radishes next April, and we actually had to kill them because they didn't freeze. So you just never know for sure with Mother Nature how you're going to win the game. But this is the mix we're planning on about 85% of our acres is all we could get over this fall. There's a few, I know this will shock you people, but we have 400 acres we're not allowed to plant cover crops on because they're bad. But the landowner owns the farm, so that's their call. We'll continue to work on those people. But they sell fertilizer. That's their industry. Guess what? Cover crops are bad. So I get completely where they're coming from. They control the fertility program on that, which makes it nice for body. We have controls. We've got some great control farms that have 7 times the level of applied fertilizer and no higher yields. But if you're selling the fertilizer, that's the game. So anyway, these are the mixes. You can see we get about $14.50 per acre across the whole farm in cover crop seed. If you want to spend a little bit less, you can drop clover out, rapeseed out, radishes out. If you want to go really cheap and just plant ryegrass, it's $8 an acre. It's pretty hard not to get $8 an acre benefit, just in terms of erosion. How do we do costs on the whole farm? So the seed cost is $14.50 an acre, and then we keep track of hours and fuel and repair. We put enough money in to basically buy a new drill every 6 years. Tractor hours are the most expensive. Pay about $8 an acre. Now I would argue that Rodney plants and Caleb plant all of our cover crops, so I would argue that the labor cost is fixed, but he doesn't get paid whether he works or not. So, anyway, so total cost per acre of $22.71, and that's going at what we would consider a pretty full, aggressive cover crop program with 4 things in the mix. Obviously, this just shows you can do it a lot cheaper to start out. I would encourage everybody. You cannot screw up planting oats and radishes after your early soybeans. It's physically impossible for that to hurt you. Even if they don't come up, it's only $10-12 an acre. And if that's going to make the difference between survival and not surviving, you're not going to survive anyway. So anyway, that's the cost per acre. And then we get into the controversial page. This is a page where Rodney and I take all of our university training and all of our statistical training and basically say, it should be about this, right? You look at the pros and the minuses. In our particular case, we know 20 less pounds of P and 30 less pounds of K on average every year. And you can say, well, that's because you're grid sampling and you're not putting it on places where there used to be cattle lots. And that's true. We've got time because we're not doing tillage.
Fairly mild.
And the other thing, we just think that just the P&K savings, that we're not putting in the water, that we don't have to apply because we're keeping track, pretty much get most of the seed back. We know we're applying 35 less pounds of nitrogen per acre than the average farmer in our county, and getting the same yields or better than we used to before we started this. So, you could argue whether that has value or not. We think if you can get the same yield with less nitrogen, then there's value in that. And you could say, well, you're double counting line 3 and 4. Maybe. I'm not sure that we are, but maybe we are. Corn yield, just looking at the oats radish yield data over 5 repetitions, 10 years. We just can't get the oats and radishes to yield less than 7 bushels more than the no cover. Just can't do it. So we're just using $7 and $4 corn. And then soybean yield increase after the cereal rye and mixes. Every time we've done a test, it's been a bushel or 2 or 3 bushels better, so we're using just 1.95. University of Minnesota uses 1.95, the number we settled on. So we think we're getting quite a bit of value. Drought tolerance, we know that every 5th year there'll be a drought in the Midwest, or 6. And we know if you average that out in 2012 and 13, we were just 10 bushels under average yields, and the county was 60 bushels under average yields. So we think that there can be something said for the system, and whether the system is all the cover crops or the fertility or the no-till or the drainage that we put in, it's our system. Carbon content, we know we're building carbon content in the soil that has some value over time. Erosion reduction, 2 tons per acre. Kind of a joke, really, because so far this year, the neighbors that have already tilled have lost about 20 ton in one rain event. So, but we'll just give them to. And it's only worth $8 an acre. I think Dr. Montgomery would say that it's worth more like $50 an acre or $100 an acre. And the CSP program payment, that'll upset people. Well, you're getting subsidized. Yes, we are. We're happy to take your money because we're doing stuff that nobody else is doing. And our water is cleaner, and we can prove it to you. So we think the benefit's around $418,000 a year on $115,000 investment. So an ROI of about 254%. That's even something Google would like to be able to do, right? So this is the way we do the system. It's in the packets. It'll be on the website or in the video that they're recording. The bottom line is for us, we grew corn for $3.10 a bushel this year. And so if you don't like my system, I'm not going away. Right? This is what kind of ultimately the point. That includes the $60,000 for life insurance and the $120,000 for health insurance. And so, it's an all-cost kind of approach. And you could argue with the numbers, right? You can say, well, that's not fair. Okay, switch the numbers. You can switch every number on there. You're going to have real trouble making me uncompetitive. The way we like, the other thing, we do know that people that are conventional tillage with twice as much fertilizer are going to yield more. They've got to yield 32 bushels more per acre over their entire farm than I do to break even with me. There's another way of thinking about that. That's the way I like to think about that. So the neighbors, if they beat us by 10 or 15 bushels, well, geez, you're only half behind. But you can play with numbers however you want. But big 4-wheel drive tractors are very expensive, and I really don't think you can chisel for $18 an acre. The way I would do the math is 38. We think we're being fair. So. Having said all that, again, these are numbers on our farm. We just encourage people to create your own database, create your own numbers. If you've not cover cropped anything, plant 40 acres of oats and radishes. It won't kill you. Or plant some cereal rye after corn. It's impossible for that to hurt you much. Get the mentors they talked about. Talk to people that have done it in your area. We hear a lot, too, that it won't work here. It's working everywhere from northern Canada to southern New Zealand. So I'm pretty sure you can make things better. Find out what can work for you. It'd be lovely to have livestock more in the system. It makes it easy. Polyface in Pennsylvania has it figured out. Have some cattle, have the chickens follow the cattle around, and the grass. That system is truly sustainable. We're trying to be sustainable in a commercial corn-soybean rotation in Indiana. Kind of mix the two together without going, and still be able to farm 6,300 acres. Honestly, we could farm 100,000 acres with this system. We expect to grow pretty quickly in the next 10 years. So there's really nothing that we're doing that you couldn't do on 100,000 acres. You just have to have 1 or 2 more drills and 1 or 2 more people. So that said, it kind of summarizes what I was going to say. We just would like to point out to people, we kind of take David Montgomery's lead on this and say, for the first time in human history, we can honestly say that technology has let farming become sustainable in the Midwest, or at least in America, by any definition. Economically, we have a lower cost of production. Socially, our cost is low enough that we can provide health care for our employees and for ourselves. And environmentally, we're putting much, much less in the water. Now, yeah, are we putting some things in the water? Yes. This becomes a relative game, right? The neighborhoods by the golf course are putting a lot of junk in the water. So it's not like any of us are going to live purely clean. It's not like we are Christ. He was here a while ago, but no, we're not there, but we're trying to do the best we can is what we're trying to get at. So, and then the question is, why are only 3% of North American farmers doing this? And there's probably 5 million answers, but I think Dan's incendiary comments and the panel were right on. Crop insurance is disastrous as the government program. It supports bad behavior. We're subsidizing people to do fall tillage in Indiana. Complete environmental